Good evening and welcome to the James Gillespie's High School Parent Council for today, the 28th of November. We're really pleased that you've been able to join us, and I hope that you will enjoy the meeting that we're about to have. Kate, could you please put me on to the next slide? So my name is Hilary Snaith. I am currently the acting chair of the Parent Council, taking over the very large shoes of Sarah Scott, who stepped down at our AGM. So there are many things that I'm learning about this role, not least how to run this meeting. So apologies, as Sarah always used to say, but again, apologies for any technical issues that we may have. We are a new production team running the meetings, and we may encounter problems, but we will endeavour to rectify them as soon as possible. Again, we had tried this previously to have live captions to give translation of this meeting into English, Polish, Ukrainian, Italian, Urdu and Chinese, and they are available via the settings button, which looks like a little cog. So please do select that if you would like to hear this or read the translation of this proceedings and to aid you to interact with the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on YouTube a little bit after the meeting. Again, the format of this meeting does mean that we can't see you and we can't hear you. And part of the reason for that is because in the format, using this format, we can have translations. If we use the more interactive format, then the translation is not available. So that is why we've continued with this method for the meeting this evening. So you can only submit your questions via the Q&A panel. We have parent moderators looking at all the questions, but they will then be published once we've checked that there are no duplicates or anything inappropriate is being posted. Again, it would enable us enormously if to select questions that are popular. If you could upvote any question that you see that you're particularly interested in, and please do check if any of the questions that you might have already been posted so that we don't get duplicates coming through. We intend that the meeting will last about an hour. I know that sometimes the meetings have gone on longer than that, but that is our hope at this time. And the Q&A board will close shortly before the end of the meeting. And again, the parent moderators will put up a notice to tell you when the board will be closed. So please do get your questions in before that happens. OK, next slide, please, Kate. So the agenda for this evening is a brief report, which I will give, including an update on our office bearers and the required report about our finances. The main, section of the meeting will be a presentation by Rob Cockcroft, Head of Support for Learning, to tell us about the work that he and his team do with the school and our pupils. There then will be the head teacher's report from Neil McCallum, and after that we will then have an open Q&A where all the questions that you've put in the Q&A board and also that have been pre-submitted to the school will hopefully be addressed. OK, so Kate, if we could have the next slide, please. So if those of you who are at the AGM will realise that at that point we only had a treasurer, Kirsten Layton, who took over from being from Ros Ingle, and there was myself acting as the comms officer. So with only a treasurer and a comms officer, that is not a parent council, and so we needed to have, in order to continue the work of the parent council, we had to have a chair and various other roles filled. So there was a meeting held earlier this month where we looked for some more volunteers to take over some of the key roles that we needed to have, and that's why you now see a number of acting role holders. So I took over as chair at that point, but I am terribly grateful to all the other people who also stood up and volunteered to take on some of the activities that we needed to have. So to Liz Hilton, who is now our acting vice chair, and to our two co-secretaries, Porrick Kinsella and Christiane Curlin. So thank you very much to them for taking on that as a dual role. And Kate, who I've mentioned you, oh sorry, and there's a spelling mistake, sorry, that should say Kate Pino, who's taken over as the comms officer. So thank you very, very much to all of them for taking on the roles that we needed to have. And of course, also to Eileen Nimmo, who continues as the refreshment secretary. So now we do have acting post holders. We are still acting because we haven't had an AGM to become sort of the not acting, you know, we sort of substantively in post, but this will be the parent council office bearers for the rest of this session. So until we have another AGM. So thank you, as I say, to all of them for taking on these roles. Could I have the next slide, please, Kate? So just briefly to talk about some of the work that we've been doing, most of it has been essentially to get the parent council set up and running again. As I say, we needed to identify new volunteers, so that's some of the key work that we have done. We've also discussed with a group of some of the members of the parent council issues which are of particular interest to that group, and some of which we've passed to the head teacher, and he will hopefully be able to address some of those this evening. Some of our Christiane, one of the co-secretaries, was able to attend the North East South East locality meeting with the City of Edinburgh Council, and also Vanessa McGar was able to attend the working group on the integrated impact assessment, looking at schools' overseas excursions and the policies that the council have for permitting those to go ahead. So a brief update, and I think Neil will possibly comment on this as well in his comments. The council are continuing to review applications for excursions, and they have various criteria that have to be taken into consideration, including equity of access and the environmental impact of any excursion. There's new guidance being developed as following on from the meetings that have been had, and the schools will receive those in the middle of December. And to hopefully inform them as they prepare their applications for these new excursions. And I think Neil will also comment on the excursions offered to pupils at Gillespie's in his comments that will follow this following the meeting. Have the next slide, please, Kate. There has been, an issue that has been of interest to the Parent Council for a while, and I'm sure to many of you, is about the capacity issues and how the roles are rising at James Gillespie's High School, and the issue about space that the school has to accommodate all the pupils. We had initiated a conversation with the council earlier on before the summer, asking to have a meeting with them about how this was going to be handled at Gillespie's, and how the school can accommodate all the pupils that are needing to come here. We have not heard further about the meetings that were due to be set up, and so I will contact the council to see where they have got with their planning, and to see how we can be involved further in ensuring that our pupils have the space that they need for their learning. And I think my last comments about this are about the fundraising for the Small Sums Fund. As you know, it's a fund that the Parent Council managed to support activities at the school that teachers apply for funds from the Small Sums Fund to support activities to enhance learning, whether it be in sports or in classroom settings. So fundraising has continued through the refreshment stalls that Eileen and her team run at various parents' evenings and other events that are open into the school. We are currently preparing the campaign for this year's festive fundraiser. Some of you may remember that we often put a call out for donations through Parent Pay just around about Christmas time to supplement the work of the fund. So there will be further information coming about this. And if you're attending the Usher Hall concert, there will also be notices there to tell you how you might want to donate if you feel so able. And another plea, as Rosingal, our former treasurer, always used to ask, there's the easy fundraising is a super easy way. You register through easy fundraising to donate to the high school whenever you're shopping on other websites. It costs you absolutely nothing. It's just by going through easy fundraising, your purchases on whatever website you choose raises a small donation for the school, which is super easy to do and really does make a difference to the work that the Small Sums Fund is able to contribute to. And I think that moves me, Kate, if you could go to the next slide, please. That moves to the report about the Parent Council finances. This is something that we have to report on at every meeting. And so thanks very much to Kirsten Layton, our treasurer, who has pulled all this together. So just to comment that the balance as of Saturday, the 25th of November, was £294.57. The main transactions have been £112.49 in donations, sum up payments of £21.63. Easy fundraising has raised £64.23 since the last update. And the major outgoing, and why our balance is really relatively small at the moment, is that we've made a payment to the school of £2,729.14, which is to cover some of the Small Sums Fund payments that are going to activities at the school. We will receive additional funds from the City of Edinburgh Council, which will cover a lot of our running costs, and that will bring our balance back up to a slightly more bounteous level. Maybe we can talk about it that way. So I think I have one more slide. I can't remember. Sorry, Kate, would you move on to the next one? Yes, so just to say that the next meetings of the Parent Council will be meeting on the 31st of January, which will be in the school and in person, obviously. The next meeting after that online will be the 19th of March, and then I can't remember, but we had 2 dates for the meeting that will happen, the last meeting of the year, at the end of May or beginning of June, and that will be confirmed nearer the time. Right, I believe that is the last slide. Oh, this is just the information. Yes, sorry. I can't see what my slides are going to be. Just to say there's lots more information about the Parent Council is available on our website, which you can see is given there. And if you ever have comments or questions that you would like to send to the Parent Council, our email address is given there also. That is the final slide, and now I would like very much to pass on to Rob Cockcroft to tell us more about the support for learning work that goes on within the school. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hilary. Am I live now? Hi, I hope everyone can hear me okay.
We can certainly hear you, Rob. I can see me still. I can't see you, but that might.
Yeah, I'm coming up as queued, so I don't know if I'm up yet.
I'm not sure.
Kate's working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure she is. Yes, you're there now.
Super. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here this evening. My name's Rob Cockcroft. I'm the head of Sport for Learning at Gillespie. I've been in the post 11 years now, and I think that actually makes me the longest serving Sport for Learning leader in the authority. And I just want to take a few minutes just to chat about the work that we do at Gillespie, and share some of the work that my team do. Next slide, please, Kate. So we run a lot of classes like nurture groups in the school, and when we do so, it's really good practice to do a plan for the day for the pupils, and I'm a creature of habit, so here's the plan for my session today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about additional support needs, what additional support needs are, and some of the additional support needs that our pupils in the school have. I'm going to chat about the 5 roles of support for learning in Edinburgh, and then there'll be time for some questions at the end. Next slide, please, Kate. So, additional support needs. It's a really broad term that covers a wide range of disabilities and conditions and diagnoses. And on the right of the screen, you can see some of those that pupils present with in school. I'm not going to read through them all, I'll let you do that. I think in my time in the school, and certainly in the 20 years that I've been teaching, the 22 years now I've been teaching, we've seen a really significant change in the support for learning needs of pupils in schools, both in terms of the volume of need and in terms of the variety as well. I can still remember I've been teaching, I started as a geography teacher. I've been teaching 4 years before I officially taught my first autistic child. Now, obviously, there've been lots of autistic children probably sat in my classroom before then, but it was 4 years of teaching in a mainstream school until we had someone with a diagnosis of autism. Now, things have changed considerably over the 20 years, and the pie chart there on the left of the screen shows the numbers, and I don't know if you can see the numbers there, of pupils with the 3 most common additional support needs in the school. So in dark blue there, we've got dyslexic pupils. So we've got 184 pupils identified with dyslexia in this school, 46 with ADHD, and 88 with on the autistic spectrum. And as many of you will be aware, many more pupils sitting on waiting lists for all of those, either with CAMS or with ourselves. So a huge change in the 20 years that I've been in the job. And we really have had to reshape the way that we do things in schools. A lot of the onus is on classroom teachers to make sure that they're meeting the needs. There's obviously, the volume is so great that we don't have direct intervention with all of these pupils. And so a big part of our job is upskilling and training teachers, classroom teachers, so that they can make their classrooms as approachable and friendly environments, so that all the pupils with additional support needs feel as comfortable and included as possible. It's worth noting as well, obviously, that all additional support needs can be viewed as a spectrum. I mean, we're obviously used to talking about the autistic spectrum, but I would say that dyslexia, ADHD, and many of the other ones can be seen on the spectrum. So for some pupils, some of our dyslexic pupils, for example, really struggle to read and write at all. I need a colossal amount of support to access written work. Whereas others, it might be just be more milder spelling issues, where something like spell check and use of IT can support them. So labels are useful, but they don't tell the full picture. And what we find in our department is you've really got to get to know the individual to really know what works for that child. And one autistic child will be very, very different from another autistic child. Next slide, please, Kate. So just before I get into the 5 roles of support for learning, just a little word about the department in this school. We've got 5 teachers in support for learning, including myself. Only one of them is full-time though. And each of the teachers is linked with one of the communities in the school. And they have weekly community meetings along with the deputy head and the pupil support leader. And that's where concerns about pupils will be raised. And we may then take that forward and hold planning meetings for that child and the family. And it's really nice to sort of, it's very clear structure. So we always know who's the team around the child. We use that term a lot, the team around the child. Who's the team around the child, who will be responsible for holding the meetings, and who will be responsible for making sure that the action points are followed through. And currently we have 7 part-time pupil support assistants in the school. We do have the funding for more, and those of you who pay attention to Neil's head teacher's weekly messages will know that we're currently recruiting for 4 vacancies. This is one of the challenges that it's not just our school, I think we're facing right across Scotland. I was interested, there was an article by the EIS in the Scotsman yesterday, which highlighted the significant trouble we have recruiting PSAs and keeping PSAs as well. We get a lot of really enthusiastic young people coming in to get experience working in schools. They do that for a year and then they may go off to become teachers. And again, I think the nature of additional support needs and the nature of support for learning has changed a huge amount in the last few years. And I don't necessarily think that local authorities and the Scottish Government have kept up with that. And I think there's still a view from some people that PSAs, it's a job for mums, they can fit it around picking up the kids from school, and rather than it being a highly skilled job working with some of our more vulnerable pupils in the school, and we really need to pay them better. And you'll be aware that there's obviously been strike action taken by some of the unions really recently to try and improve their pay, that we really need to pay them better and view them as a really important asset in schools. At the moment, we are toiling in school and we're focusing on our PSAs being mostly practical subjects to keep people safe. But when we're fully recruited, we do like to have PSAs right across the school, working in a variety of departments to support the pupils that need that help. Next slide, please, Kate. Thank you. So here you can see the 5 roles of support for learning. Now, each local authority sort of organises their support for learning teachers and the work that they do in the schools slightly differently. And these are the 5 roles that the City of Edinburgh drew up quite a number of years ago now, before I actually started at this school. I'm just going to go through each one of them at a time and just give you a little flavour of what that means in a practical sense. So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, please, Kate. So consultation, so this covers a range of things really. I mean, I guess the main thing is it's liaising with teachers, making sure that they're aware of the additional support needs of pupils, they're aware of strategies that they can use in class. A big part of it is transition, and for us that starts, and that's both ends, so P7 into S1, but then also post-school, so leaving school into further education, further training, apprenticeships, employment. So in terms of the P7 to S1, our work there really starts in January. And each of the support for learning teachers is linked with a number of feeder primary schools. And between January and Easter, they go out to the feeder primary schools and meet up with the support for learning teachers there. They meet with the class teachers. And really, we're trying to gather as much information about the pupils that they work with, any additional support needs, any strategies that are successful that we know that we can then share with class teachers. We attend child planning meetings for those pupils with more complex needs. We often meet with the parents and any specialists that have been working with those children. And as I say, it's about gathering that information, and that all goes into our support database, known as the Rainbow spreadsheet. And that gives class teachers easy access to a summary of that child's needs, much more detail up in the Sport for Learning files, and pupils with IEPs have more information as well. But that's really sort of the main thing. Part of the transition process, which I can talk a little bit more about later on, is the enhanced transition, and that has grown significantly since I joined the school a number of years ago. And we used to, I think when I started, invite 10 pupils up every year between Easter and the summer holidays to give them a little bit of a taster of what high school's like. We now invite 50 pupils up. So primary schools identify those pupils that they feel need that little bit of extra support, and they come up for a number of sessions between Easter and the summer to get to know each other. We get to know them, and they get to meet a number of teachers around the school, and we structure it around the schools, their pupils making a movie about the school. So they, with support, go around the high school with video cameras, filming teachers, interviewing them, and then we edit that together and they send that back to their primary schools and show it to the rest of their class. So it's a lovely way for us to get to know the pupils, and it really does just ease pupils into high school and gives them a wee bit of a head start. A large chunk of our time in our department is spent with planning meetings. And so that will be meeting with parents, the pupils, any specialists that we're working with that child, and looking at how we can remove barriers to learning and make the pupils' time with us as successful as possible. I suppose one thing to note is different from primary school. In the primary school, you might routinely, if a child has a diagnosis of autism or dyslexia, you might routinely have termly planning meetings. As you can see, the volume of pupils that we have with additional support needs means that that's not really possible. So we are more based on if we feel that we need to take action. If there's a problem occurring, that's what would probably instigate the planning meeting process. And then once the problem has been resolved and we've put some solutions in place and we feel that things are comfortable, we might put a halt to that process, but then we can pick it up another time if we need to. Sharing successful strategies, that sort of links in with one of the other ones, which is about training staff, and I might talk a wee bit about that later. And then the last one, which again, and Neil will attest to this because he was involved with this in his previous role as a deputy head when he was here, is the assessment arrangements. And I'd just like to take a little bit of time to talk about that because that's a big part of my job. So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, Kate, there's a few notes about that there. So I'm not going to read through this, I'll leave you to read through that on your own. So assessment arrangements are adjustments that we can make in formal exams. So typically the Nat 5 exams in 4th year are then higher and advanced higher exams in 5th and 6th year to remove barriers to learning for pupils with additional support needs. So that might be, we might have a dyslexic learner who really struggles to read for themselves, and so they might get a human reader in their English exam who's allowed to read the text of the exam, and they might get a little bit of extra time just because they might need more time to process information and to write it down, and so we can put that in place for exams. However, we have to meet the criteria that the exam board, the SQA, impose on us and impose on all schools. And the SQA love a bit of bureaucracy, they love a bit of paperwork. So this has become an epic undertaking. I think when I started again 12 years ago, we used to typically have around about 180 entries each year for assessment arrangements. So that would be one child getting an arrangement in English, and they might get obviously different arrangements in different subjects. Nowadays, we have about 800 arrangements each year. So a huge number of pupils getting various sorts of support in their exams, be it something simple like using a computer, to being more complicated by having a reader and a scribe and someone to prompt them. And the whole process is, as I say, is really complicated. Each individual subject teacher needs to generate evidence to show that the candidate is disadvantaged because of their additional support need. But then they also need to generate evidence to show that what they're putting in place, be it a reader, more time, a scribe, has a positive impact on that pupil. And we're quality assured by our educational psychologists. So I have meetings with them in February where they look at all the data that we've gathered and they say, yeah, I'm satisfied that you've got enough evidence here, or no, you need to go back and gather a bit more evidence. And every few years we're audited by the SQA, and they come out to the school and they check our record keeping, make sure that we're sticking to their policies. We were audited this time last year, pretty much exactly a year ago. I'm pleased to say that we passed the audit. but it is a huge undertaking, and something that we are feeding back to the SQA and saying that, again, they've not really changed their policy for the last 20 years. And I think in light of the changes and our increased understanding of the impact of additional support needs, they probably need to consider changing their policy. And actually, they have got some consultation open at the moment that we've been filling in and getting our voice heard. And I am hoping that they will listen to that and make the process easier, because it does place a disproportionate burden on class teachers, but I think more significantly on pupils. And as I say, you know, our understanding is much better now. We know that autistic pupils generally tend to get rather anxious in these situations, but we've still got to jump through all these hoops to put the support in place, rather than just saying, look, we've got a diagnosis of autism, CAMHS are recommending this is what we think we should do. Anyway, I'm not going to talk more about that at the moment, but that is something that I say that takes an awful lot of time of staff in the school. Next slide, please, Kate. Cooperative teaching is another one of the 5 roles of support for learning. And typically we tend to help out in maths and English classes, and we generally there look at to where the greatest need is, and in addition, sometimes having a pupil support assistant in those classes, one of the support for learning teachers might go in there. The benefits of cooperative teaching are really great in that you can split large classes into 2. One of those can work with a small group of kids, give them that a bit more support in class, and really close liaising closely with the class teacher to make sure they're still on topic. It is challenging at the moment, though, in terms of staffing, and we'd love to do more of it, but at the moment we are just doing a couple of classes, and it's mostly PSAs that are in the classes offering that support. Next slide, please, Kate. So liaising with specialists is another one, and this can be anything from just phoning them up for advice, inviting them along to young person planning meetings, often liaising with a lot of these people when it comes to post-school plans. So we've got some fantastic third sector providers, so the ones down at the bottom there, Canongate Youth, Barnardo's, Light Up Learning, Enable. These charities are wonderful and really do a lot of the legwork that we just don't have time to do. So at the moment, for example, we've got Enable coming in, offering an independent travel group to some pupils, meeting with them after school, looking at helping build their confidence at using buses and public transport to get around Edinburgh. And Canongate Youth have worked with us for a long time, and we've got a strong relationship with them. They're based down off Infirmary Street. Absolutely fantastic organisation, run lots of youth clubs. They run clubs for autistic pupils. They run activity agreements for some of our pupils who need more support, who maybe aren't ready to go to college after school. They can go along to Canongate Youth, where they get experience, work experience, they get support writing CVs, support going to college. Absolutely fantastic. We work closely with the other ones there, so our Ed Psych. So our Ed Psych is shared between a number of schools. We don't have one in permanently. At the moment we have 2 because they're doing a job share, and they're really consultations. So we go to them if we've tried some strategies that aren't working and see if they can offer some more suggestions. And you'll be well aware of the challenges that the NHS is under at the moment in CAMHS. So we do work closely with CAMHS. I don't think they're actually on my list there. But they are very much under pressure. We would love to have them at more meetings and their advice, but as you're well aware, they are very, very squeezed at the moment, and we don't always see them as often as we'd like. Yeah, so I think that's that slide. Next slide, please, Kate. Staff training is something that's really important in this school. We have a 3-year rolling programme of training, and Edinburgh Council have it as one of their goals to have autism training every 3 years in schools. And I think it's really important that we have this rolling programme. It's all too easy just to assume, oh, we've trained up the teachers, they know about this, on we go. And particularly because additional support needs, the understanding about that is evolving all the time. So next week, for example, I'm on some up-to-date ADHD training. It's about 5 years since I last did some. I'm really looking forward to that. I think in particular, what's coming out of the more recent training that we're going to is the different way that these additional support needs impact on our girls in the school. So for a number of years, autism was very much seen like a additional support need that affected boys. But we now know, obviously, that it presents very differently in our girls. And we're now coming to that understanding with ADHD as well. ADHD often was sort of seen as a label that could be ascribed to typically sort of hyperactive, bouncy boys. And I think some of the more recent research and understanding about that is showing that it's just as prevalent in girls, but manifests itself in a very different way, and maybe not in such a visual way. So rather than sort of having hyperactivity of being twitching and moving around and not being able to sit in the seat, the hyperactivity might be going on in the brain. And so their thoughts are racing, they're really struggling to think clearly, but it's not as visibly noticeable in class. And I think the more research that is done in that, the more we will be able to help our young people in school and offer the correct support. One of the things as well that we're increasingly thinking about is it's not just training for staff. I think a really important role of teachers, and particularly my department, is preparing our young people for the wider world and making them realise that they are going to come into contact with people throughout their life that will have a variety of additional support needs. They may be neurodiverse, they might have mental health issues, they might have physical health issues, and increasingly we're needing to train pupils about that as well. And we're also trying to include the pupils in that in the actual drawing up of that training. We did some autism, well, it was sort of autism awareness stuff with pupils last year. And it was the same slides and the same information we've used for the last 5 years, but we had a really proactive group of pupils who came up afterwards and said that wasn't good enough. It was out of date, didn't really address these things, it didn't really address the difference of autism in girls, and they were very keen to get involved and help shape the training and the advice that we can give to pupils. And I think that's something that as we move forward, we need to do increasingly is get the pupil voice. We talk more about lived experience now. So we've got lots of people with lived experience of neurodiversity and various different disabilities. And it's very important to include their voice in the training and the advice that we're giving to staff and to pupils. And on that as well, we've just managed to restart our pupil-led neurodiversity group. They meet on a Monday lunchtime in Support for Learning. And it's a space for some of our neurodivergent pupils, so pupils with ADHD, autism, to come along. It's led by one of our lovely 6th year pupils, and it's really to give them a voice in the school so they can feel supported, so peer support with one another, but also an opportunity for them to feed back to me and to the wider school about what we could do to make the school a more inclusive environment. Next slide, please, Kate. So, direct teaching. Now, this is the bulk of our work, and this is what myself and my colleagues spend most of our days doing. So the 4 Support for Learning teachers, they have pretty heavy teaching loads, so they're normally teaching sort of 5 out of 6 periods a day, and I teach around about 3 or 4 periods a day out of the 6. And so you can see that's just a sort of a sample of the sorts of classes that we run. I'm just going to go through some of them just to sort of give you a bit more information about them, just so you can picture what it's like. So the S1 reading groups, we've got 3 reading groups at the moment running in first year, just small groups. We help to identify the pupils that will need this additional reading support through data that the primary schools gather. So the City of Edinburgh have something called the Literacy Tracker. Pupils with below average reading scores are tracked all the way through primary school each year. And so at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, we do standardised reading assessments with the pupils. And in primary school, they do a range of different reading interventions, Read, Write, Ink, Fresh Start. Our neighbours at Gillespie's Primary do a lovely poetry unit with the pupils. And then that data comes to us and it highlights the pupils that we need to consider for some sort of interventions. Myself and Anita Sharkey, who's our transition teacher, meet with the pupils in September, and we undertake some up-to-date reading assessments, and that helps us identify those pupils that need to come to that reading group. One of the challenges at secondary schools is any sort of intervention obviously means coming out of a class, and particularly in first year, our first years are super keen to experience the breadth of subjects that can be offered in a high school. You know, they've got all the lovely new subjects like CDT and art and home economics, and we'd be really reluctant to take them out of that. So it is always a bit of a dilemma about wanting to intervene with pupils and give them the support they need, but also not wanting to take them out of subjects that they might really enjoy. So the model that we have at the moment, which works okay, is that we take pupils out of 2 of their social subjects a week in first year. And we find that works quite well because it's topic based and they can go back into second year and they've not really missed too many skills, and they can continue with those subjects. S2 literacy groups are rather similar really, so often a lot of the pupils that were in the reading groups then transition into an S2 literacy group, and there we look at developing pupils' writing skills. So in term 1 we have a focus on creative writing, term 2 functional writing, and then we move on to more study skills. And again, the pupils there are identified by the literacy tracker, but they've also been with us for a year then, so we liaise with our English colleagues and they help identify pupils that are really struggling with their literacy, and we extract them from classes then. S2 is the time that we sort of make a bit of a more decisive decision and we take pupils out of their modern language. This is slightly controversial. I know that Peter O'Connor, who runs the languages department, is not always in agreement with me on this, but we do generally find that pupils who are really toiling with their English language also face challenges in the modern language. And it really comes often from the pupils and their parents that they're really wanting just to focus on their English language skills. And so we have made the decision that we take pupils out of their modern language then, and then that means that they stay with us into third year and fourth year and get support from Support for Learning rather than going back to a modern language. And that takes me neatly onto our third year groups. So our second years in February get to do their course choices. And one of the options then that's open to pupils with additional support needs is to pick Support for Learning. So as you know, typically in James Gillespie's, pupils sit 8 national qualifications. And that is a little bit higher than across the rest of Scotland. I think typically in Scotland, pupils sit 6 to 7 national qualifications. So by sort of effectively dropping one and coming to Support for Learning, they're not undermining their chances in the future. They're still going to be coming away with 6 or 7 national qualifications. But by picking Support for Learning, it means that pupils can come to us for 3 times a week, for 3 hours a week, in what we call tutorial groups. So typically we'd have around about 8 to 10 pupils in a group with a Support for Learning teacher. And there we do work on study skills, so a lot of work on revision techniques, use of iPads to get the best out of those, and we support the pupils with their other subjects. So it's a really great class to run because you never really know what to expect. So you might be working with one child on a persuasive English essay, you might be doing some maths revision with another child, might be helping a child write up a science report that they're doing. And we find that these classes really help to take the load off the pupils. You can imagine pupils with additional support needs are additionally tired when they go home at the end of the day. They're having to work that little bit harder during the school day. So if we can give them time during the school day to get support with their subjects, we find that's really helpful. And the feedback from pupils is that it's really beneficial. Just takes the stress off, and also just narrowing down and focusing on 7 subjects rather than 8 does often lead to greater success in those 7 subjects. And that's an offer that's open all the way through third year to 6th year. And we've got kids coming up to us doing advanced hires. That does sometimes stretch our ability to support them. It's maybe more of an independent study space when it comes to advanced hires. But again, pupils find that really useful. But something that we've been running for the last 3 years is a supported Duke of Edinburgh class. So many of you will be aware that from third year, all pupils in the school are offered the opportunity to do Duke of Edinburgh as an extracurricular activity. And Anne Campbell, who's one of our Support for Learning teachers, oversees the Duke of Edinburgh programme in the school. However, we were conscious that by asking pupils to do it in their own time and without the support of teachers, we were excluding some pupils with additional support needs who maybe would find it too challenging to do that. So 3 years ago, Anne set up a supported Duke of Edinburgh class that's an option now on the course choice sheet for 5th and 6th years, and it's been really successful. We get typically around about 10 pupils with additional support needs in those classes, and it's timetabled during the week. So the pupils come to us, they get support in school to do all the admin work, sort of filling in their evidence. We support them more closely to get volunteering placements. At the moment, we've got 2 lovely pupils volunteering at an old person's home just down the road from us. And we've had people in the past volunteering at the primary schools, at local libraries. And it's been absolutely wonderful. I mean, I saw a video of one of the groups finishing their trek across the Cairngorms in the summer, and it was absolutely fantastic to see these pupils who, some of who've never really been out of Edinburgh, being up on the in the Highlands of Scotland and completing some pretty epic trails after camping for 2 or 3 nights in Scotland. So it's an absolutely fantastic class, really, really good, and something that we're keen to continue. Almost done now. So nurture groups and Fit for Life, again, so this is sort of focusing on more the social side of things and the emotional side of things with pupils, rather than the academic. Quite a number of our staff, myself included, are nurture trained. So in conjunction with the Wellbeing Hub, we run nurture groups for our first year pupils, and that's really focused on building up their self-esteem, build up a really key relationship with staff, small group-based work, lots of modelling of good behaviour, turn-taking, listening skills, all these soft skills that maybe you can't tackle in a more academic class. And they are wonderful. So today I've been running a nurture group with some of our first years, doing some Lego animation, and the stuff that they come up with is absolutely amazing. So it's a lovely, lovely thing to do with our pupils. I've touched on transition support groups before, so I won't go into that anymore. Every break and lunchtime, the large group, I should have said, we're based in Brunsfield House, so the old building in the school, and we're fortunate to have what was the dining hall in Brunsfield House as one of our rooms, beautiful large space, and that's open at break and lunch to any pupils, not just to pupils with additional support needs, and it's always staffed, and it's this lovely space that pupils can come up. Obviously, as you're aware, we're a very busy, large school, and it's nice to have a quieter space that pupils can come up to, with staff on duty they can chat to, board games they can play. And again, we try and encourage pupils to develop their social skills there. Pupils can come up and get support with their homework as well. And it's a lovely space to be at break and lunchtime. And finally, there's the homework club. So Dr. Andrews, one of our other sport for learning teachers, he runs that on a Tuesday after school in the library. Again, open to anybody, but we do sort of target some pupils with just additional support needs. And it's just another supported space for them to work on their homework. Again, as I said, kids with additional support needs are often deeply, deeply tired. So I think if you pop up onto the next slide, Kate. The last one, there we go. So that was a whistle-stop tour through the work that we do here. I'm sure I probably missed out lots of stuff that we do. I don't know, guys, if we want to do questions now, or if you want to wait till the end of Neil's presentation to do questions. I'm happy to take a lead from yourselves.
Thanks, Rob. I think possibly it might be wise to do the questions now. There are a few questions that have come up in the chat, so if you're happy to take them now, then
yeah, of course,
that would be great.
Super.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know whether you can see the Q&A board, but I mean, and I might have got these in the wrong order, so I apologise for people that if we've missed any. But there are a number of questions asking sort of essentially about sort of the feedback from parents and the parents' involvement in how their pupils, how their children might sort of access support for learning, and the feedback that you seek from parents, and how that feeds into the support that you give to pupils at the school.
Well, I suppose you're asking, so I mean, normally parents' main point of contact, and I think that's something that's in such a large school is really important. Parents need to know who can they speak to. So if they've got a concern about something, who can they speak to? And the two main people would be the pupil support leader, so in old money, their guidance teacher, and then the support for learning teacher that is linked with that community. So that's always your first point of call. So if you've got a concern about your child's learning and you think there's maybe an underlying issue there, I'd say the first point of call would always be to get in touch with your pupil support leader. They could then raise it at the community meeting, and then someone from Sport for Learning, most likely the Sport for Learning teacher that's linked with that community, would get back to their parent. It might just be an initial phone call or even an email exchange if that's more suitable. But then, as I say, if there was something more complicated and we feel that there's an underlying issue and we need some more time to sit down and get to the bottom of it, we might invite them into a child planning meeting, and then obviously we may then need to involve further specialists. But yeah, so that's really sort of the main way that parents, I'd say, would get in touch with us.
Thank you. I think there's been sort of some concerns that it's not always, that a parent has commented that it doesn't feel enormously transparent necessarily. So I think that's hopefully helped whoever asked the question, that they can feel that they should contact their pupil support leader and then the support for learning teacher associated with that, and hopefully then engage in a conversation with yourselves about what's best or what they feel would be appropriate for their child.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Perfect, thank you. There's a comment that's been that's come up a couple of times about sometimes, so I'll just read it out. Sometimes neurodivergent pupils are very high academic achievers and seem to miss out on support from Support for Learning because they are not presenting as struggling in school. And says, are these pupils also getting the support they need? Their needs may be more social than academic. And so I wonder, can you comment on how you support those pupils better?
Well, if I'm perfectly honest, I think that's one of the challenges that we face, is that we do often have to make, because we are a relatively small team, and as I said at the beginning, we've got a large number of people with additional support needs. We often do have to make quite tricky decisions as to who we prioritise that we work with, and I can put my hands up and say we don't always necessarily get that right. But I suppose that sort of our primary thing is to support pupils with their academic work. The social stuff is important as well, and I would hope that things like the pupil-led neurodiversity group is a really good point there, getting peer support, feeding back to the school as what we could do. We've got these groups like the Break and the Lunch Club. A lot of our pupils that we maybe don't work with academically come along, and we catch up with them and chat to them there. And it's maybe sort of helping them link in with other organisations as well. So one of the ones that I didn't mention actually earlier is Number 6. Very fortunate to have Number 6 in Edinburgh. They're a fantastic organisation that work with autistic pupils and autistic young adults, really, from the age of 16. And so some of our work has been helping our pupils liaise with them. They run a lot of social groups for autistic young adults. And similarly, Canongate Youth, so they've run the A-Teens group on a Wednesday afternoon. And so we've got a number of our pupils that go down there and get social support and social groups from them. So it is a tricky one. I would absolutely love to be there for everybody, but because we are a relatively small team, we do have to make those difficult decisions sometimes about who we prioritise putting support in with. And a lot of the time it is focused on those that are struggling academically, to make sure that we feel that they're given the best possible chance to get the qualifications that they deserve.
Thank you. I think this goes back to some of what you all do provide for the pupils that have trouble, more difficulties with their learning. And the question is, have you given consideration providing smaller classes for autistic pupils who can't cope with the large classroom dynamic? And I think maybe you touched on that before, but if you wanted to add anything to that.
I would love to. Let's. I think, as Neil knows, that comes down to budget. And I think if schools, and this is a problem right across the Scottish education system, and I would say probably the UK education system at the moment. I think increasingly we're finding, well, as our understanding increases, we know that many of our autistic pupils find an environment like Gillespie's and like many high schools really challenging. You know, coming into a space every day with 1,600 pupils, for some of our pupils, is overwhelming, and it's very hard. And you touched on this before when you were talking about the demands on space in the school. We're very, very tight for space. I mean, pretty much every lesson, every classroom is used. And so it's not just a case of more staff, but it's also a case of more space. And unfortunately, those things cost money. And I think, again, as I said, that our understanding of visual support needs has changed radically in the last 20 years. But I don't think there's been the same radical increase in funding for education. And I think if we were to do that, and I think it would be absolutely wonderful. I completely agree that for some of our autistic pupils to be given the best possible chance of success, smaller class sizes, quieter spaces are essential. But unfortunately, in the current environment we're in, that's not really an option. And I think that we'd need to have a bit more of an overthink of the whole of Scottish education, really, and think about how we can restructure it to meet the needs of these pupils. We do bits and pieces. So some pupils do come out of classes and come to Support for Learning at times, but our department, we've got 3 classrooms. At times we can have 15, 20 kids in each classroom, and you know, it's just as noisy here as it is in the mainstream bits of the school. So I completely sympathise with the person that said that, and I wish we could do more. We do a lot already, but I think we would need to see increased resources to school in order to be able to satisfy the demand.
Thank you. There's another comment, and I'm not sure to what extent you'll be able to answer it, but again, around the question of funding, and so someone has asked, is support for learning funding taken from the overall education budget, and if so, what fraction of the council budget goes on support for learning in comparison to the overall budget? That may be not a question you're aware of, but
I'm not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So our budget for PSAs, that is done, that does come separately. So we get a separate budget for that, and that's amended each year. It used to be, so when I started in the job, you'd sort of bid for PSA hours. And so for individual kids with additional support needs, you would say, right, wee Johnny here is autistic, they need help in these classes. We would like to bid for them to get 10 hours of a PSA support a week. I think that system stopped around about sort of 15, 16 years ago because it was just getting overwhelmed. Again, that sort of coincided with the huge increase in the number of pupils identified with additional support needs, and actually just doing the paperwork and then the council auditing that and looking at it was becoming exceptionally time consuming. So there is a formula now based on role, the number of kids with additional support needs in your school, the background of those child, so whether they're entitled to pupil equity fund, how many care experience pupils you have. All of these factors are sort of put into a giant spreadsheet, and someone at the centre then uses that to work out your PSA budget for the year. So we this year have a budget for the equivalent of 200 hours a week for PSAs, which sort of is roughly around about 8 to 9 full-time PSAs. So not a vast number of PSAs really, but that's typical for across secondary schools in Edinburgh. As to the budget for support for learning, so the teachers in the school, I'm not entirely sure how that's decided, if I'm honest.
Thank you. I mean, it is complicated. I totally appreciate it, but thank you for your frankness in addressing that question. Thank you. And I think we probably should head to Neil's presentation quite soon, because I think our aims to finish within an hour have been entirely unfounded. However, there is a question about, and I think an important one, about how and when does the support for learning team connect with the pro-Black and anti-racist youth worker who is embedded in JGHS? A question sort of making sure that unheard voices possibly are fully represented in the way that support for learning is accessed.
That's a really good question, and probably something where there's more work to be done. We do liaise with our colleagues on the equalities team, and I think that's something that we could take forward, and I'd be more than happy to invite them along to our departmental meeting to see what we could do. Great.
Thank you so much, Rob. I think I mean, as somebody said, it's very detailed information and very helpful. So thank you very much. And yes, someone has asked, this meeting is being recorded, and so we will be sharing that. We obviously haven't got to every question that's been asked. So if you do have a point that you would like to have addressed, please do send it into the Parent Council email address, and we will follow up with the school and with Rob to hopefully get an answer that is helpful to you. So yes, again, thanks so much, Rob. And I think at this point we will move to Neil, who has been waiting for quite a while to come to his presentation. So thank you so much. Good evening, Neil. Thank you.
Thanks, Hilary, and thanks to Rob for coming along this evening. I hope this finds everybody well, and thanks for your time this evening. It's very much appreciated. So update for the meeting tonight. Start with staffing. So we have some new staff that have joined us since the last Parent Council meeting. We have Mr. Tulloch, who's joined us in Design and Technology, Mr. Walton, who's joined us in RMPS, Mr. Hutchison in History, and we have two new science technicians, Miss MacDonald and Miss Hannett, who have both joined us in the team along in science. Taking a break at the moment on maternity leave are both Mrs. Kennedy and Miss Bladen, and we wish them both well. Our prelims, S4 prelims, have been taking place now, reaching the midpoint of the second week, and the feedback from the invigilators and the exam teams is very positive, seems to be working well and progressing well. The majority of our assessments are taking place down at the Darragh campus, with some taking place on the main campus, particularly when it's the larger numbers for the likes of the English exam and for some of our practical subjects such as music, which took place this afternoon. Planning's also underway for the S5-6 prelims, which are due to take place in January, and we would hopefully have the initial timetable out with pupils, parents and carers before the Christmas break starts, to allow young people to see when the exams, the assessments are taking place. I've been asked to give a bit more of an update in terms of school improvement planning. So just a reminder that we did our school improvement plan, and a lot of our priorities for this current year were based on the supported self-evaluation that took place last November. And that looks at the quality improvement indicators from How Good Is Our School For, and that's the national document that's used across all schools in Scotland for self-evaluation and improvement. We're looking at all aspects of our school improvement plan and trying to take that forward. And again, we look to share that with parents and carers. It's certainly our intention going forwards to make sure that parents and carers, as well as our students, are involved in that process. And this year we've reintroduced our school improvement teams, and staff have been working on those in our different in-service days and CAT days, as well as other times out with that, to try and make sure that we're taking forward those improvement priorities to make our school as good as it can possibly be. Obviously, as we look to review those policies and share them with parents and carers, whether that's through surveys, focus groups, a range of approaches to ensure that parents and carers have the opportunity to review and support in terms of the school progress, and we certainly value the input of the wider school community to make sure that we're moving in a positive direction in terms of our progress. So the next school improvement plan and our standards and quality, we'll begin that process usually around Easter time, and the final documents are due to be submitted to the local authority, usually in the second last or last week of June. So again, we'll be looking to share them with the wider school community prior to then, and hopefully begin that process of involving parents and carers and our school improvement teams, whether that's the ability to attend the meetings or whether that's to be able to look at the actions that we're talking about and to be able to give us feedback to support that process. Just some update, we had our Scottish Curriculum Information Evening following the Parent Council meeting in September. There was a request for an information session on the Scottish curriculum, so we held that on Tuesday the 7th of November in the school theatre. We had about 150 parents and carers and some young people as well who joined us for the evening, and Deirdre O'Brien, Deputy Head Teacher, and myself gave a presentation, and we shared that widely through the school app and also by email. We also had a request from our cluster primaries about the possibility of P7 parents and carers coming along to that evening, so we extended that invite to them as well and subsequently shared the presentation with them also. In relation to homework, the working groups continuing to review our policy, something that we need to ensure more consistency, I think, particularly across our S1 and S2 year groups in the approach to homework. We're also looking at how we can provide resources through our school website and other sources, such as the school app, to be able to support parents and carers to have an understanding of how they can support their young people at home with homework, and also to have an understanding of what the expectations would be. We're also looking at how we can further share information, workshops in terms of our one-to-one iPad implementation, and how parents and carers can support the young people. And I know Mr. Ardila gave a presentation to our S1, S2 parents, I think it was, about the use of the iPad and supporting with our young people with that. So again, that's something we're continuing to look at, and as we develop that further, we'll share further information with you. Mental health and well-being, as Mr. Cockcroft touched on, obviously that's something that we're keen to support all of our young people with our Wellbeing Hub and our SNUG, and a lot of incredible work going on by staff and also young people in terms of supporting the mental health and well-being of young people across the school community. And speaking to Mrs. Graham, who's our Senior Development Officer, taking a lead on that, we're now going to be sharing a termly bulletin, which will be sharing information in regards to the work that's being done to keep everybody informed and to make sure that we can promote the different opportunities for support that are available, and how we can encourage our young people to access these supports to support them as well as possible. Communications working group have been working in the background, if you like. We've had a revamp of our letters that are sent out to try and bring them more up to date and to make them more appropriate. We continue to review the school app and looking to use the calendar aspect of the school app so that the calendar is accessible for parents and carers on a daily basis. Our website, which we've completely transferred now from a managed site to in-house, we continue to progress with that. We've kind of reviewed the purpose of the website and somewhere where information can be found, and really obviously looking to review that communication policy. And again, we'll be seeking parents and carers information and feedback in and around that and how they can support and help. Excursions, Hilary touched on this at the start of the evening, and the city has reviewed, as Hilary shared, and the processes that we have in place now. So to give you a bit of an understanding, there are 4 categories for excursions. Category 1 is something that takes place locally in a familiar setting. It's non-adventurous activity. That would come to me as excursions coordinator for the school. We would have a category 2 excursion where it might be more extended, there might be transport involved, but again, there's still no adventurous activity. So again, that would come to me as excursion coordinator for me to be able to sign off and progress with. And again, these tend to be more straightforward and ones that I can deal with, and a lot of these excursions are taking place on an ongoing basis. Category 3 would be something where there's possibly adventurous activity, or the location could be deemed as being potentially hazardous. We have to assess whether we're using a registered City of Edinburgh Council provider, and if we are, then it would be a category 3 visit. So that's something that might happen during the school day, and young people would leave in the morning and return home on the same day. If it's something that is got overnight or overseas, then it would become a category 4 excursion, and these are the ones again which need submission to the local authority. We now have to submit a pre-trip assessment, which goes before we have approval to progress with that. And linked to what Hilary said earlier on, that is where a lot of the work is taking place to review the processes that have been implemented by the authority, and I look forward to receiving the updated advice on that. We've been working very closely with staff here. Staff are very keen to reintroduce our overnight excursions and our foreign overseas excursions. We had a very strong, very healthy exchange programme with links with schools in France and Spain and Germany, and we're very keen for that to be reinstated. Similarly, a number of different excursions taking place in social subjects, geography, history, that again we're keen to support to make sure they're taking place. Through that process, we've also been reviewing that we really have a need with a number of excursions that we're looking to have, and to try and be as supportive as possible to parents and carers to create a booklet that we will look to introduce at the start of an academic year, which lets you see the range of different excursions that will be available and the time that the trip is likely to take place and what an estimated cost is likely to be for that, to allow positive decisions to be made to support our young people. And we have an opportunities fund in school as well, so again always looking to support any young people that maybe isn't thinking that something might be possible for them. We want to do our best to make sure that we support all of our young people and remove the barriers as far as we possibly can. S6 study space, asked for a little bit of an update on that. So I have to say our S6 have been fantastic. We have a range of spaces on the ground floor on the Malala Yousafzai building. The 6th years have been accessing them. They have a space which they can use at break and lunchtime as well. The only thing with a couple of these spaces is particularly some of the study booths is again they're located right beside classrooms or teaching areas that staff have classes in, and we've asked the young people, the 6th years, that if classes are taking place in here and there's more of them, and the member of staff has maybe asked them because of the noise that's been generated to maybe find another space. That has been very much appreciated, and the S6 have been very supportive in that regard. And again, we've to open up and use the forum as much as we possibly can, the dining centre. And again, I know that the People Voice were speaking with Mr. Porter, Deputy Head Teacher, in and around the access of study support spaces at Darragh. So again, there's other opportunities. I appreciate not all of our young people will be there, but again, there are it's good spaces there that those who are utilising that building will be able to use over the course of the school day and week. Also had a request for an update on the RSHP, which is Relationships, Sexual Health and Parenthood input in our PSE programme. There should be, if they haven't already come out today, letters coming to parents and carers of pupils in S2 and S3 detailing the programmes and what's involved, and giving links to give further information in and around what is taking place with that programme. So again, it'll also give you a link to contact if you had any questions. And as a PSE, personal social education, is delivered by our pupil support leaders or guidance teachers. So again, would be the good first point of contact. I had a request in and around about parent carer pupil experience survey data, and that's something that I know the school did on a regular basis prior to COVID, prior to 2020. Having discussed with the senior team here and tried to find more recent data, it appears that a comprehensive parent carer experience survey hasn't been carried out since then. However, we have had quite a number of surveys and requests in and around health and well-being, our pupil equity funding, mental health and well-being, looking at our learning and teaching returns, and again also seeking parent and carers feedback during the time when we had COVID. So again, all of that information is there, and going forwards we'll certainly be looking to survey parents, carers and pupils in and around their experience of the school to make sure we are absolutely clear about where we're doing well and where we need to continue to do better to provide the service that we would hope all of our young people in our school community would expect of us. I've had a request from officers at the centre in terms of proposed term dates. I just received that this afternoon about proposed term dates for 2025-26 and 26-27. So I'll pass that information on to Hilary. There's a consultation in and around that with a return by the 26th of December. And there's a link to a survey again for that. They'll be able to give an overall feedback in terms of those dates. I'm pleased to share we had a successful Developing the Young Workforce, or DYW, event. That was held just last month, and that was for our S4, 5 and 6 pupils. We had over 22 different organisations who worked with us, and they were based in the theatre over the course of a day, and the pupils had different opportunities to access that with a range of companies there, talking about graduate apprenticeship schemes. We had universities, we had colleges, and it seemed to be a very successful day and very well received. So really pleased at that. And this coming Thursday, we have another DYW event, but this time for our S1 and S2 pupils, and this is being delivered by the BBC in our school theatre on Thursday morning. Our reporting system, which is called Edict, it was just to share if you've received a report recently and you have received that report multiple times, our sincere apologies for that. We seem to be having issues with the preparing and distributing of the reports. The way the system works is that it starts to issue, and then once it reaches a certain point, seems to be around 50 reports, it resets, which then starts the process again. So apologies if you've received multiple reports. We're trying to get to the bottom of that, and hopefully we'll get that resolved as soon as possible before the next set of reports comes out. Coursing, we have readjusted the date for our coursing evening. Mrs. O'Brien, our deputy head teacher who leads on coursing and the timetable, had reviewed with pupil focus groups, and they felt they needed to have the most relevant and most up-to-date information. So that was the reason for changing it to the 17th of January, so that that links in with the coursing, and looking to have coursing interviews for our young people as well. So the coursing evening is now going to take place on the 17th of January from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and further details will follow in regards to that, and obviously our course choice booklets will be issued as well. But Mrs. O'Brien would also like, if possible, to come and present at the Parent Council on the 31st of January to be able to share further information in and around the coursing and the timetabling and what we're doing as a school going forwards. In terms of equalities, the City of Edinburgh Council held their Saroj Lal awards recently, and we were delighted to have a number of nominations across our pupil and staff body, and I'm really pleased to share that Mrs. Elaine Oram from our science department won the CEC Teacher Award. We were absolutely delighted for her, and it was real recognition of her hard work and equalities in supporting our young people, and again it was lovely to be able to celebrate all of our young people who were nominated for their fantastic work in and around equalities and supporting the school community. This week we have been involved in the Hong Kong Scottish Schools Initiative programme. This has been something that the school seems to have been involved in for a number of years prior to COVID, and we've had visitors this week so far from Hong Kong. Yesterday we had a visit from Principal Poon of St Paul's Co-Educational College in Hong Kong, and today we were visited by 7 further principals from schools across Hong Kong, where yesterday Principal Poon had meetings with the pupils and with some staff, and was also in observing some lessons across the curriculum. He was here for pretty much the full day yesterday, so it was lovely. And then at the end of the day, he met with some of our pupil voice representatives and had a fantastic discussion with them in and around what they would like to see coming out of any form of partnership. And then today, the visitors that we had were given a tour of the school by some of our amazing pupils from the Pupil Voice across 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th year. They then had a presentation on mental health and well-being from Mrs. Graham, and also had a meeting with 6 representatives from the Pupil Voice, and then finally had a little showcase from one of our guitar ensembles with Mr. McGeary over in the music department before heading off for a session at Boroughmuir High School this afternoon. It was lovely to have them here. I think it's important for us to look outwards as a school and try and learn from other schools and from other systems to try and make sure that we can support our staff to be the best in terms of they can be in terms of delivering high quality learning and teaching, and the feedback from both the visitors over both days was hugely complimentary of our young people and of our school. So it was a delight to have them, and we hope they enjoy the rest of the week. Just some dates for you for the coming weeks. Pleased to share we've got our senior drama production taking place this Friday. The evening performance starts at 7 o'clock. I think tickets are still available. We then have our Christmas concert returning to the Usher Hall on Wednesday the 20th of December at 7 o'clock, and I know there will be further tickets to be released. As soon as we have the date for that, we'll share that information. Coming back after the Christmas break, we have our 5th and 6th year prelims taking place from the 15th to the 30th of January. The 17th of January, we'll have our coursing evening, as already mentioned. 23rd of January, we'll have our parents' evening for S2. And then the 30th of January, we have our trust meeting, followed by the next parent council meeting on the 31st of January. And just in touching on parents' evening, the proposal was for this year to have in-person parents' evening meetings for pupils in S1, 2 and 3, and online consultation meetings for those in 4th, 5th and 6th year. And hopefully that's touched on all of the points that I had to share with you this evening, and I was asked to update you on. So I will pass back to Hilary.
Brilliant, Neil. That is very comprehensive, and we are very grateful. That is a lot of work to put all that together. So thank you very much indeed. You did touch on some of the questions that have come up in the Q&A, but there are some that haven't come up, and I'll, if you're okay to share. I think we are coming towards the end. We are now quarter over, but I think there are a number of questions that I think people might like to have comments on. I'll start, and I'll do this by the most liked, if that's okay. And the most liked comment, and this goes back to Mr. Cockcroft, a really good presentation from Mr. Cockcroft. So thank you very much for all the time you spent with us, Rob, and obviously the attendees here are very grateful. So to record that, thank you so much. The next question we have with most likes is, will we receive more information about S4 pupils applying for a week's work experience? So I'm not sure how much of that information has gone out, but are you able to comment any more on that, Neil, at all?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure at this right now, but what I will do is I'll go and check tomorrow, and then I will get that information to you. So I know obviously we're very keen to support our young people. I know traditionally we've tended to have year groups go out at one time, but given the size of most of our year groups now is about 300, that can bring more challenges. So I'll just make sure I give you the absolute right information and link in with our developing the young workforce coordinator to make sure that I'm not telling you something that's not factually correct. So I'll get that information and share it as soon as I can. That's great, thank you.
Along sort of a line of sharing information about some of the work experience and other sort of career work that you've spoken about, there's a comment that it seems that not all pupils received information about the events that you spoke about when for the S4s and for the event that's coming up this week, DYW activities, and there's just a question about how that's shared to pupils, because it would seem that not all pupils are aware. I don't know whether you can comment on the way that information gets out to them.
Yeah, and certainly I know the DYW event that we had for the 4th, 5th and 6th years, we had a change in our DYW coordinator, so there seemed to be a bit of a lapse there in terms of getting the information out as soon as we would like to have, but my understanding is that that information was then shared both through our key adult, which would have been the day before, which is, as I say, absolutely appreciate is not ideal, but then also through our year group teams. So every year group has an announcement team where we try and share key information with all of our young people. So, and again, they should be getting notifications to let them know that there's an update for them, and again we try and share that through those teams as well as key adult in the bulletin, and on the day of the event in the theatre for the 4th, 5th and 6th years there would be tannoy announcements to try and remind them. Again, the BBC event that's taking place this Thursday, I believe only came to us at the end of last week, so we're trying to put plans in place yesterday and today to make sure that that's able to happen. So the young people may not have received that information yet. I was only made aware of it later this afternoon, so I would imagine that communications will go out through their teams, and again through key adult and appropriate tannoy announcements on Wednesday and Thursday.
Perfect, thank you. I should go back to a question that was made, a comment that Bruce made. It says, thank you to Hilary and the other volunteers for stepping forward to the acting roles. He asked, will these roles be confirmed, or will there be I guess EGM extraordinary general meeting at some point? we have looked through the constitution to understand how that works with the parent council, and essentially the text that we are understanding, it says if for any reason an office becomes vacant during the time of the term that would normally be served, the council will agree to another parent member to serve the remainder of that term. So that's under that on that basis it's been agreed by the members of the parent council who are listed on our website that they are happy with the people who have stepped forward, and so we're taking it that's accepted at this point. So we're not planning an extraordinary general meeting. If there is one required, if that's felt necessary, then people can suggest that they would call for that. But at this point, we hope that that's not needed, and we will just continue as we are currently. The next question that's come up with that's many people have been interested in is about your thoughts, Neil, on the plans to deal with capacity at the school. Obviously, this is something that we will take forward with the council, but someone has asked, is it as an experienced built environment professional, is it possible to, for instance, that another story could be accommodated on the Lauderdale Street site? Boroughmuir has already had an extension on what is a more constrained site. I don't know whether you have any thoughts to add to that comment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Listen, I absolutely appreciate how challenging it is with the size of our school population and the buildings that we have. I think, as Hilary alluded to, we are keen to engage with officers at the centre to make sure we have appropriate conversations to develop understanding and to make sure that our school community is listened to in terms of how we can take that forward. So again, I'm always happy if anybody would like to get in touch in regards to that aspect. I would be more than happy to have a conversation.
Thank you so much. Another question about, and thank you for sharing the information about the school improvement plan and your intentions to share it with the wider parent body as you go on developing it. The question asks about recognising success with the improvement plan. How will you know the school is as good as it can possibly be? What does better look like? As well as exam performance compared with virtual comparator, what will you measure?
Yes, absolutely. We use the Insight data, the national tool that we shared at the last online parents meeting when Mr. Cotter came to talk about our exam analysis, and subsequently, the Insight tool allows us to look at virtual comparators. So that's absolutely one aspect of data that we look at, but also in terms of our school improvement plan. It's referring back to how good is our school as one of the key documents, and there are 6 levels, with 6 obviously being excellent, and there are examples against each of the different QIs, quality indicators, which indicate illustrations of what would be required to achieve that level. So as part of that process, we obviously referring back to that document. I've been to 2 courses just in the last week in and around inspection. The school was last inspected in 2010, so I would imagine that we would be in line for an inspection at some point in the near future. We have no information that anything is coming, but obviously given the amount of time since the school was last inspected. So again, attending these courses, linking in with people who have been inspected more recently, and trying to utilise the skill and knowledge of our colleagues across the authority to support in regards to the achievement of inspections and how we can take that forward as a school to try and be the best that we can be. And as I say, obviously placing our young people at the centre of all of that is absolutely my priority and the priority of the staff.
Thank you. A question that we'll touch a little bit on in terms of trips and things, but the question is, did we maintain the connection with the school in South Africa that the S6 pupils used to visit? I know we no longer do the S6 trip, but a lot of support went to the school in South Africa, and it was suddenly withdrawn during COVID. And the questioner says, could we reinstate the support fundraising even without the actual trip? Connections with those less fortunate are important and help pupils to understand how others live. I wonder if you have any comment or insight about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not sure why things would have changed during COVID. Similar to our link schools in France, Spain and Germany. We'd want those relationships to continue. I've actually had a few communications recently from colleagues in South Africa. Obviously it was a huge part for our S6 before COVID. Number of young people over probably a decade who had the opportunity both here and going to Umlazi and Durban in South Africa to have those opportunities, and the young people we were able to bring from South Africa and the staff from South Africa to have those opportunities as well. So absolutely, I think it's part of the school's history. I think from a global citizen perspective, it would be a fantastic thing for us to maintain and continue. How easy or realistic it is in terms of re-establishing the trip with us taking young people there, then that's obviously something we need to look at and we need to review. But in terms of continuing the partnership and supporting our schools that we're linking with in South Africa, absolutely, I would be very positive and very keen for that to continue. So again, we'll try and share information as those communications progress as to what the possibilities are.
Great, thank you. There's been a question and I had about the active schools clubs, and I know we'd asked Elliot Ambrose if he could comment, and he hasn't been able to get back to us to update us on how those have gone. But there is so I think there's a question, the particular questioner has about how their child has paid to attend a club, but unfortunately they don't get picked to be on the team, even though they don't even get apparently to attend the training sessions, which is clearly very frustrating. And they're just asking if there's a solution to this, and possibly that's something that will need to be followed up specifically. But I wonder if you have any information that you can share about how the active schools clubs are going at the school this session, and how well they've been attended. Maybe this is something we need to follow up with Ambrose, but it'd be interesting if you have any comment on that. Yeah, no.
Certainly my understanding is our clubs are as popular as ever. Everything seems to be pretty much full to capacity. Again, being in meetings with our young people over the last couple of days when they've been sharing about our school, they've been very positive about the active school programme and the opportunities that are there. If there is a specific problem, I would certainly ask that person if they want to get in touch with myself or the guidance teacher, just to make us aware of these situations. We're more than happy to follow up in that regard. And again, as far as I'm aware from my conversations with Elliot, the clubs are being very well attended, very successful, and I'll link in with Elliot in regards to any issues as well, because obviously we want all of our young people to be having the best experience possible.
Thank you. So the question says, thanks for the information. Just for Duke of Edinburgh, who should pupils contact in the school? It seems that there was a staff change who was in charge of DV, and a pupil has sent email to obviously to the wrong person because no reply has been received. So is there an update on who should people be contacting if they're interested to get involved in Duke of Edinburgh activities?
Yeah, so Mrs. Hoss, one of our history teachers, if it's a third-year young person, was the lead on the Duke of Edinburgh. She's currently off on maternity leave, but Miss Forbes in the geography department, I think, has taken on the lead for the S3. If it's not S3, then I would suggest that the young person maybe approaches Mrs. Campbell and the support for learning over in Brunsfield House, or maybe speak to Miss Forbes in geography, and they should be able to point them in the right direction if it's not one of those two that are leading the particular Duke of Edinburgh group. Thank you.
I think I'm just going to check that I haven't missed out a question because there's so many questions. No so yes, I noticed that the Q&A is now closed, and we are coming towards an hour and a half. So thank you very much for everyone who stayed around, and to Neil and to Rob for answering all our questions. There are a number of other comments that are added, and I think we can share them. Somebody has asked, will we address any of the questions that haven't been answered during the session, and we can certainly send any of these, send the comments to the school for any further comment that may be needed. There's one comment that I think I might share that I think is possibly relevant, but sexism and unconscious gender bias are still big problems at secondary schools, including James Gillespie's High School. More training is needed for staff so that they can identify their own unconscious gender bias. Also, every member of the leadership team should read the book Invisible Women. Just as a comment, I think I guess it's useful to understand better how we might deal with these issues ourselves. Thank you very much. I think we will pause there. It's been a long meeting. We've learned a lot. Thank you very much to Neil and to Rob. If anybody has any further questions, as I say, please do address them to the JGHS Parent Council email address. We will endeavour to follow up on all of them. I have previously put the email address in the chat, but it's available on our website also. But to contact us at jghscouncilcoms, or one word, at gmail.com. We will endeavour to answer your questions as soon as we can. I hope that's been useful. As Neil said, our next meeting is the 31st of January. We will discuss, as Neil offered, for Deirdre O'Brien to come and speak about the coursing that is coming up for our S2, 4 and 5 pupils. And we will share the full agenda with you nearer the time, but you are very welcome to join with us in the school. It'll be in the library starting at 7 p.m. And I guess as we are now nearly at Christmas time, we can say Happy Christmas and when it comes, and wish you all a very happy holiday when that comes also. But for now, thank you so much to everybody and good night.